Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Just to go over the schedule now, inshallah. We'll have our morning du'as, and thereafter we'll have the Q&A session. The sleeping time during i'tikaf changes, so the sleeping time, inshallah ta'ala, the doors will open up at 5 o'clock. Those of us who would like to stay till ishraq, meaning till the sunrise happens, join us for the tilawat of the yasin and dua, they can stay till then. Otherwise, the doors will open downstairs at 5 o'clock, and by the time we wrap up here upstairs, we'll probably be around more like 5:30, 5:45. And then you'll have rest all the way till about 11:45 or 12 o'clock. And of course, this time should be used for sleeping. Average days at 12:15 till Dhuhr, we'll have individual recitation of Quran, so that all of us can try to get our khatam done as much as possible. But today, at 12:15, we'll have our Tajweed Halaqah, Tajweed workshop, which will begin with Surah Fatiha, go over A'udhu Billah, Bismillah, Surah Fatiha, and then we'll also go into a short tafsir as well. So the last 10 surahs and Surah Fatiha will be covered in these 10 nights. So that program usually will be held after Dhuhr, but today it will be held before Dhuhr. Reason being is after Dhuhr is the Zakat seminar. So definitely please be prepared for that as well, inshallah. Come.
Inshallah, I'll recite a portion of the dua, and then if everyone can just repeat after me. Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis samaa wa huwa as-sami'ul 'alim. Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا. اللهم بك أصبحنا وبك أمسينا وبك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك النشور. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت. أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء لك بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وعلى كلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك، فلك الحمد ولك الشكر. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن، وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل، وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل، وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت، عليك توكلت وأنت رب العرش الكريم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير، وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة أنت آخذ بناصيتها، إن ربي على صراط مستقيم. اللهم عافني في بدني، اللهم عافني في سمعي، اللهم عافني في بصري. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم عافني في بدني، اللهم عافني في سمعي، اللهم عافني في بصري. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم عافني في بدني، اللهم عافني في سمعي، اللهم عافني في بصري. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم عافني في بدني، اللهم عافني في سمعي، اللهم عافني في بصري. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الكفر والفقر. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من عذاب القبر. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الكفر والفقر. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من عذاب القبر. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الكفر والفقر. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من عذاب القبر. لا إله إلا أنت. اللهم رحمتك أرجو، فلا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين، وأصلح لي شأني كله. لا إله إلا أنت. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق
Alhamdulillah, those were the du'as that our beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to recite every morning. And alhamdulillah, here at Darus Salam, every morning in our morning assembly, all the students, the boys and the girls, they recite all of these du'as. And alhamdulillah, we hope that they continue reciting it in their vacation, in their time off as well, and throughout their lives. The purpose of is that they memorize the du'as. All the students, within a few weeks, they memorize the du'as if they're reciting them every day. And this habit, inshallah, remains with them all their lives. And we hope that this also, we extend this to all of the musallis and all the participants in the i'tikaf. We can talk for hours about the virtues of each du'a. Even the first one on the list, for example, Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'a ismihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama'i wa huwa as-sami'ul 'alim. Begin in the name of that Allah, that when His name is taken, nothing can harm in the heavens or in the earth, and He is all-hearing, all-knowing. If this dua is recited 3 times in the morning, then absolutely nothing in the entire creation can harm you and hurt you unless death is decreed for you that day. And if you recite this 3 times in the evening, nothing in the entire night can harm you or hurt you unless death is decreed for you that night. Such a powerful dua of protection. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر. If this dua is recited, then all the blessings, what is the meaning of the dua? اللهم لك الحمد, O Allah, to you belongs all praise. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك. O Allah, whatever blessing I am enjoying or any of your creation is enjoying, فمنك وحدك, they all emanate only from you alone, and you have no partner, la sharika lak. So therefore, falak alhamd, to you belongs all praise and all shukr, all thanks. So whoever recites this in the morning, then he will have fulfilled the right of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings of that day. And whoever recites this in the evening, Allahumma ma amsa bi min ni'matin, he will have fulfilled the right of all thanking Allah for all the blessings of the night. And if you thank Allah for the blessings, those blessings will be preserved and protected and will be increased. Just a little background about this next session is that we started this last year. This is a time when we are awake all night. We have been doing ibadah and striving very hard and making tilawat of the Quran and eating really hard. So this is why this session is kept particularly at this time. Very light session. It's a very fluid session, a lot of questions and answers. It's not going to be the same topic every day. Every few minutes the topic changes with the questions as they come in. Whose questions? Your questions. So it is not something really hard on the brain to understand so early in the morning. It is not aqidah. Aqidah is after dhuhr, inshallah. Fiqh of zakat, this would be the wrong time to do fiqh of zakat. We would come up with wrong calculations. Everything would be messed up. So we have the fiqh of zakat after dhuhr as well. So this is a very, very light session in which the questions we ask will be answered, inshallah, to the best of our ability. So just a little background about asking questions is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this in the Quran as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask those who have knowledge if you do not know. So this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us in the Quran, that we should ask if you do not have knowledge. And there are certain adab and etiquettes of asking questions. We should ask questions that are relevant. We should not ask irrelevant questions. Already we have received irrelevant questions. Completely, absolutely irrelevant. So I'm not going to even entertain them and read them later on, but just to give a lesson, and I'm just using an example. This is a question that came here, that what is Shaykh Abdul Hakim's name before he reverted to Islam? Right. So I told you this will be a light session. So this is how, I don't even have to create the jokes. You give the jokes to me. So this is this is a classical example of an absolutely irrelevant question. So what will you be asked in the grave, and what are you responsible for on the Day of Judgment? This is what you have to ask. I can assure you from whatever knowledge I have of Quran and Sunnah and all the hadith, Sihah Sittah, we studied Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Nasai, Ibn Majah. Nowhere does it come any riwayah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you will be asked in your grave. The angel will come, shake you up, Munkar Nakir, with blazing eyes, and ask you, what was the name of Shaykh Abdul Hakim Dickinson before he reverted to Islam? Can you believe it? So, what is the answer to the question? He happened to be an employee here, teacher here, as he taught in Darul Qasim, taught in Masjid Usman. Not that we don't know the answer. Ian Dickinson, I-A-N was his first name. So his name was Ian Dickinson, but that is, and now Allah Ta'ala gave him his blessing of Islam, and he changed his name to Abdul Hakim, because his legal name still was Ian, and he was an employee here, so through the legal documents, I happen to know his name. So not that we don't know the answers. That's not why we're, but it's not relevant. So what should our question be? It should be something that will benefit us. What are wrong types of questions? Those that will not benefit us in the dunya, not benefit us in the hereafter. Or another type of wrong question is if you are trying to put someone else at fault and point out someone else's mistake in trying to embarrass someone else. So, for example, if we are visiting a community, I go to a community as a guest speaker, and after the session, there's a question and answer. After the talk, there's a question and answer session. So somebody asks a question, not related to the topic. The topic was about, for example, how to raise children in Islam, upbringing of children. And then the question is asked is that, Mufti Minhajuddin, is it permissible for somebody to be on the board of a masjid when his house is on interest? So the person, and then I asked him, are you on the board of the masjid? No. I didn't ask him if his house is on interest. Right, that's not an appropriate question. But rather I asked him, are you a board member of the masjid? No, I'm not a board member of the masjid. So therefore then this question is not related to you, right? So if he's trying to point out someone else, point fingers at someone else. We have to ask questions regarding ourselves. How can I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The rest of the questions are good. About different questions about salat and zakat and saum and hajj and ibadat. So questions that will benefit us to correct our a'mal. Not to put someone else down. Another wrong intention is that sometimes the question is asked to show off one's own knowledge. So it's such a complicated question that everyone else will be listening to it and say, wow, this man has a lot of knowledge. I don't even understand what he's talking about. So, is it correct that Imam Hakim in his Mustadrak al-Sahihain was mutasahil in his classification of the hadith, and we should rely for the authentication of Zahabi, his muwafaqa, or not? So what in the world does that question mean? Many people will be surprised, will not know what he's talking about. They'll say, wow, he said something about Hakim and Mustadrak and muwafaqa of Zahabi. So this question does make sense. It has a meaning. Just in case everyone is wondering, does this question actually exist? It does. Imam Hakim, rahmatullah alayhi, he wrote a book called Al-Mustadrak ala Sahihain. And the purpose of the book was that Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, rahimahumullah, in their respective Sahih collections, they had applied certain conditions for accepting a hadith. Very stringent conditions with respect to Imam Bukhari, and slightly less stringent with respect to Imam Muslim. So that is why Imam Bukhari rahmatullah's book is known as Asahhul Kutubi Ba'da Kitabillah, the most authentic book after the book of Allah itself. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا, who can be more truthful than Allah? إِنَّ أَصْدَقَ الْحَدِيثِ Kitabullah, the most truthful words are the words of Allah. So after Allah's book, then is the book of Sahih Bukhari. And second in rank after Sahih Bukhari is Sahih Muslim. So they put a really high level of standard and strict conditions for accepting hadiths to be in their books, in their respective works. But all the hadiths that are out there in the world, in the huge body of literature of hadith, that fulfilled those conditions, did they claim to have collected all of them? No. Even with their stringent conditions they had set up, all the hadiths that fulfilled those conditions were not necessarily compiled. Every hadith in the book fulfilled the condition, but every hadith that fulfills the condition is not necessarily in the book. So Imam Hakim rahmatullahi alayhi came later on and he wrote a book called Al-Mustadrak ala Sahihain, in which he said that he compiled all the hadith which, per his understanding and his grading of the hadith, fulfilled the conditions of Bukhari and fulfilled the conditions of Muslim, yet were not included by Bukhari and Muslim in their works. So these are added Sahih hadiths at that same level, which are not included. Do you follow? So this is what the questioner was asking, is that should we rely on him, and Imam Hakim, when he classifies a hadith and says, this is at the level of Bukhari but not included by Bukhari. This is the level of Muslim but not included by Muslim. Should we rely on it, or should we wait for the muwafaqa of Zahabi? What is the muwafaqa of Zahabi? Imam Shamsuddin Zahabi rahmatullahi alayhi came later on and he looked at that work of Imam Mustadrak Hakim and he realized, and this is the consensus of the hadith scholars, that Imam Hakim, he had a noble intention, but when he came to grading hadiths, he was very, very liberal, very lenient. And he ended up classifying many hadiths at the level of Bukhari and Muslim, which are not. So just because Imam Hakim says it's ala shart al-Bukhari, it doesn't mean it's ala shart not at the level of Bukhari. So Imam Zahabi rahmatullahi alayhi went through the entire work, and then at the end of what Imam Hakim writes, he says that wafaqahu Zahabi, or uwafiquhu, I agree with what he says. Yes, it is at the level of Bukhari and Muslim. Or he remains silent, he does not agree. So if Imam Zahabi agrees, then literally it is at the level of Bukhari and Muslim. And if he does not agree, then just because Imam Hakim thinks so, it doesn't fly. You understand? So this is what the question is asking. Can we rely on the classification of Imam Hakim, or do we need to wait to see does Imam Zahabi agree or not? Or how do you rate and compare and contrast the pros and cons of Badruddin Aini's Umdatul Qari and Ibn Hajar Asqalani's Fathul Bari and Kirmani and Qastalani, these commentaries of Sahih Bukhari? So that means this person knows these four authors, knows these four books and commentaries of Bukhari. So many times we see that people ask questions to impress others. So that should not be our intention. To put anyone else down, to impress some others, or irrelevant. Rather, questions that will pertain to our benefit for our success in the akhirah and in the dunya. Who should we ask? We should ask those who have knowledge. If you ask somebody ignorant, then the blind leading the blind, ضَلَّ فَأَضَلَّ. He will go astray and he will lead others astray. This was prophesied by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself in a rigorously authenticated hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَقْبِضُ الْعِلْمَ إِنْتِزَاعًا يَنْتَزِعُ مِنْ قُلُوبِ الْعِبَادِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not snatch away the knowledge by taking it away from the hearts. That the ulama are there and then all of a sudden the knowledge is deleted from their hearts. Or shift delete, out of the recycle bin, completely gone. It's not going to happen. That is not how knowledge will disappear from the world. وَلَكِنْ يَقْبِضُ الْعِلْمَ بِقَبْضِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away the knowledge by taking away the ulama. حَتَّى إِذَا لَمْ يُبْقِ عَالِمًا. Until a time will come when Allah will not keep any alim around. اتَّخَذَ النَّاسُ رُؤَسَاءً جُهَالًا. Then people will make ignorant people as their leaders in deen. This is something that is well understood. Everyone agrees about it. That no one will go to the best and most skillful and somebody lost their watch and then left it for an alarm here for me. Okay. So the most genius, skillful, award-winning structural engineer who has won awards, national awards, international awards for his design, no one will go to him for open heart surgery. That you perform my open heart surgery since you are an award-winning structural engineer. No one will ever do that, right? And no one will go to a neurosurgeon, a brain surgeon, a cardiothoracic surgeon and ask him that, can you design this bridge for me? He's completely ignorant out of his field. Every person is a proficient in their respective field. But it is this miskeen, poor deen, which is the means of our salvation, in which everyone is a master. Everyone is proficient and can give fatwas. Where I was an imam before in St. Louis, we used to say that the entire first saf are graduated ijaza in muftis. The whole first saf can give fatwa. Every member of the first saf. They have that right, privilege. So, why is it that when it comes to the deen, we feel that studying the deen is not important? Any layperson can give rulings and answer intricate questions. This is where misguidance comes. Rasulullah ﷺ said, اتَّخَذَ النَّاسُ رُؤَسَاءً جُهَالًا. They will make ignorant people as their leaders in the deen. فَسُئِلُوا. They will be asked questions regarding the deen. And they will not be shy. These people will not shy to say that I don't know. Rather, فَأَفْتَوْا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. They will start giving fatwas and answers without any knowledge. فَضَلُّوا وَأَضَلُّوا. They will go astray and they will lead others astray. If a person, just like there are etiquettes of asking questions, there are also etiquettes of answering questions. One of the etiquettes of answering questions is that if you don't know, then what should you say? You should make up a question just to satisfy the brother? Just to keep your name? What about he's going to lose the confidence in the deen? No. What do you say? قَوْلُكَ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمْ لِمَا لَا تَعْلَمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. For you to respond to say, لَا أَعْلَمُ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. I do not know, Allah knows best. As a response to a question that you don't know the answer to, this is min al-ilm, true ilm. So the one who is a genuine alim, who is a scholar, he will say, La a'lam, I don't know, Allahu a'lam, Allah knows best. And the one who makes up an answer just to satisfy the questioner or to avoid embarrassment, this is jahala. So this is such a scenario where the one who's giving an answer is jahil. The one who doesn't give the answer is alim. He has true knowledge. The one who says, I don't know. There are many examples of great scholars who did not answer questions when they did not know the answers. Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi, there's a story where someone came all the way, Imam Dar al-Hijra, and asked him a question. He said, La a'lam, Allahu a'lam. Someone asked another question. He said, La a'lam, Allahu a'lam. Third question. Several questions in a row. And then, after asking the question, this becomes a hujjah and a dalil and evidence against us on the Day of Judgment if we do not practice according to that. After we get the answer, then we have to practice on it. If we should not be on just a random survey, a fact-finding mission, just to find out all the facts. But rather, we have to practice. If a person is ignorant and he breaks the law, and he doesn't know and he's doing something wrong, then is that person going to be sinful or is going to be forgiven? What do you say? I'm asking you the question. What do you think? A person is performing salah, nafil salah, after asr. By the way, that's not okay. You're not supposed to be performing nafil salah after asr. ثلاث نهانا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن نصلي فيها وأن نقبر فيها موتانا عند طلوع الشمس وعند استوائها وعند غروبها. 3 times during the day the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم has prohibited us from performing any nafil salah. When the sun is rising, when it's right at the top of the zenith, and when it's setting. So somebody is performing nafil prayer right when the sun is setting. Or, if you think that's far-fetched, what does happen is that right when the dhuhr time is entering, right before the dhuhr time enters is zawal, istiwa al-shams, when the sun is right at the top and before the dhuhr time enters. The sun rises from the east and it reaches the top, and for a few minutes, 2-3 minutes before it starts declining. If you put a stick in the ground, the shadow will, when the sun rises from the east, will extend towards the west. It slowly gets smaller, until finally there's one moment when the shade switches over to the other side. Right before it switches over. That minute, it is not permissible to perform any salah. And what happens? Multitudes of people, in America, in the masajid, and on the day of Friday, on the day of Friday, in this particular season when the Jummah time, when the Zuhr time enters in late, in the summer. You go in any masjid, anywhere in any city, and you'll find people performing Tahiyatul Masjid or Sunnah right at the prohibited time. Like 103, 105, 107, it goes as late as that. The Dhuhr time starts. And what are people doing? In Jummah, they're performing Sunnah of Jummah. So, is this sinful? This is against the direct prohibition of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, if a person doesn't know and he breaks the law, then what's the problem? Is that okay or not? What do you think? It's not okay. Ignorance of the law is not an acceptable excuse for violation of Allah. If you just went straight past a red light or a stop sign, if the cop pulls you over and said that, I don't know, I just moved here, then how do you have a license? Yeah, I got a license. How did you pass the rules of the road test? I passed it. I got my license. So you're supposed to know this. No, I didn't know. Too bad you didn't know. It's your fault. You better know now for the rest of your life. Red doesn't mean hurry up. Red means stop. So, not knowing. In kunta la tadri fatilka musibatun. Wa in kunta tadri fal musibatu a'zamu. If you do not know, this is a big problem. But if you do know, the problem is bigger. This is what the Shair says in the poet. Meaning, if you violate the law and because you don't know, this is a sin. But after you learn, so then you say, what's the solution? The solution is, I better learn. So now you learn the law, you learn the fiqh, you take the weekend academy classes, you learn the whole fiqh. After learning, if you break the law, the nature of the crime is now even greater. So you'll say that, I'm in a bigger trouble now. So literally, a person who is ignorant and breaks the law is in a better state. He's sinful, but he's in a better state than the one who learns the law and then breaks the law. So then, how do you get out of trouble? How are you going to pass and enter Jannah? How are you not going to be in trouble is that you learn the law and then practice according to the law. There's no other solution. If you remain ignorant, we're in trouble. And if you learn and not practice, you're in worse trouble. You have not progressed, you have regressed, you're in a worse situation. So the only way out is that we learn the deen and then practice according to the deen. With ikhlas and istiqamah, steadfastness. So that is why we have to ask these questions. In the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one person, he went out in a campaign and he was wounded so bad and he had to take a ghusl. He did not ask, or he asked somebody who did not know, and they said that, you have to take a whole farad ghusl. Even though the commandment for such a person is that person can make tayammum. Just hit the ground on the stone and wipe his face and wipe his two arms. If that will not hurt him. That's all he had to do. But somebody told him, no, you have to take a whole farad ghusl. He ended up taking a farad ghusl. Ghusl means ritual bath. For our youngsters who don't know what a ghusl is, you should know what a ghusl is. And it's a ritual bath. After taking that bath, look at the spirit of obedience. Even though he was given the wrong answer, he ended up dying from exposure to water. And when news was brought to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so upset. He said, "Qataluhu qatalahum Allah. Innama shifa'u al-ayyi as-su'alu." That you have killed him. How dare you give such a wrong answer? Verily, the cure for ignorance is to ask someone who has knowledge. But the munafiqeen and the hypocrites were so despicable people that they used to abuse the nature of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and would be asking so many questions. One day they asked him so many questions to the point that somebody asked him that my father, who is my supposed father, the one that, he's called my father, is he my actual biological father or is it some other man? So what a terrible question. Whatever happened in Jahiliyyah happened in Jahiliyyah. But he's asking about, na'udhu billah, the past actions of his own mother. That's how sick his question was. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so upset on that day. He got upset and he said in a very loud voice that I am not going to move from this place until I answer all of your questions. Go ahead. Every single question you ask, I'm going to give you the definite answer, whether you like it or you don't like it. Started answering their questions. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayah in the Quran. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu la tas'alu an ashya'a in tubda lakum tasu'ukum. O those who believe, don't ask such questions. That if the answer is given to you, then you won't like it. You won't like what you're going to hear. وَإِن تَسْأَلُوا عَنْهَا حِينَ يُنَزَّلَ الْقُرْآنِ. And if you ask such questions while the Quran is still being revealed, while Jibreel alayhi salam is bringing revelation, تُبْدَ لَكُمْ. Allah will make the answer apparent to you. So when this ayah was revealed, then they became very scared and they stopped asking questions. And people who had a genuine need also stopped asking questions. And finally, this became very difficult because people had genuine needs, but they were too embarrassed and too scared to ask questions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to break the silence and the freeze on the questions by teaching them that you can ask questions if you have a genuine need. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel alayhi salam. In the very famous hadith, Jibreel took place. بينما نحن عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اطلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب شديد سواد الشعر. We were sitting in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when all of a sudden a man appeared who had the whitest of white clothes and he had the blackest of black hair. لا يرى عليه أثر السفر ولا يعرفه منا أحد. He had no sign of any apparent journey upon him, yet none of us could recognize him. So he was not from Medina because no one recognized him, yet he was not a traveler because there was no sign of travel. So where did he come from? Appeared out of thin air. Yes, he did appear out of thin air because he was Jibreel alayhi salam in the form of a human being. حتى جلس إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأسند ركبتيه إلى ركبتيه وجعل يديه على فخذيه. He came up to Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم and put his knees right up to the knees of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم. And he asked him questions. أخبرني عن الإسلام. Tell me what is Islam. Tell me what is Iman. Tell me what is Ihsan. We had about, for 3 days, for 45 minutes each, we studied this hadith in Bukhari Dars. So about 3 periods of pretty much, the period was 45 minutes, but our teacher used to take the whole 15-minute break that came after it. So it used to be a 1 hour period. So 3 hours we studied this hadith, and there's a very beautiful hadith of Jibreel, one of the most Jawami' al-Hadith, one of the most comprehensive hadith. We don't have time to do that now. But the point of the matter was that at the end, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, who's the narrator, that أَتَدْرُونَ مَنِ السَّائِلِ. Do you know who is the questioner? So they said, we don't know who it is. فَعَجِبْنَا لَهُ يَسْأَلُهُ وَيُصَدِّقُهُ. We were very surprised by this man's behavior. He jumped over everyone's back, came right to the front, and he asked you questions, and then when you answer the question, he says, صَدَقْتَ, yes, you gave the right answer. So when you ask the questions, we think he doesn't know the answer, that's why he's asking. But then he says, صَدَقْتَ, you said the right answer, that means you already knew from before. So we were very confused by this person. Who is this man? So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, أَتَاكُمْ جِبْرَائِيلُ يُعَلِّمُكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. This was Jibreel alayhi salam who came to teach you the masail of your deen. So that is why it is permissible to ask. We have examples of this in the Quran. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الشَّهْرِ الْحَرَامِ قِتَالٍ فِيهِ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. What is the meaning of وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ? It means they are asking you regarding this. This is the response. So Allah would reveal ayahs in the Quran. Sahaba would ask questions and Allah would reveal the answer. So, inshallah, we will finish in time. You're supposed to finish at 5 o'clock, right? Yeah. So we'll cover these questions, inshallah, then I can continue talking. I want to make sure that this is the question I picked up before Fajr. Maybe some questions came in a little bit later, but we'll try to finish all of these questions. So some of these are very brief, very simple, yes and no answers. These are the questions that you have sent. Is there any significance to the water that is used for wudu? Is it considered impure after using it for wudu? So, when a person makes wudu, then the water that leaves his body after making wudu itself, if you think this is very simple, the answer is that the water is tahirun ghayru mutahirin. What in the world does that mean? It's tahir and it's ghayru mutahir. Means, in English, if you translate it, it means it's pure but not purifying. Pure but not purifying. What does that mean? When you say pure, it means the water after it leaves your body that you use to make wudu. Like you're washing your arm and the water flows down your arm and then the drops come off of your elbow. If the water that you use to make wudu, it's number one, is tahirun, it's pure. Meaning if that water comes onto your clothes, then your clothes are still pure. You can perform salah in those clothes. If you're very sloppy in making wudu or making wudu in a very rushed manner, and you wash your face and the water that comes off of your face comes all over your shirt, or from your arms comes on your body, then your body and your clothes are not impure. You can perform salah. It's not impure, najasa ghalidha, nor khafifa. It is not pure, impure, heavy impurity or light impurity. There are different types of impurity. It's neither one. It's completely pure. But the second term we said ghayru mutahirin. It's not purifying. Meaning if that water is collected, because if you have very little water, and you want to say that, let's be green, and let's save water, I'll make wudu, reduce, reuse, and recycle. You ever read the 3 arrows? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So if you want to reuse, we'll say, let's make green wudu. So I will make wudu, and the water that comes out, let's collect it, and let us reuse it for your wudu. Will that work? No, it will not work. It's not purifying. After the wudu has been done once, we cannot reuse the water. It is not purifying. So it's pure in its own nature, but not purifying. Tahir, ghayr mutahir. That's the answer to that question. This one, is hukka haram? So basically in hukka, sometimes people think it's Middle Eastern origin. It's Arabian tobacco. Doesn't make it more legitimate or halal. Tobacco is harmful for the body. And as the research kept on coming through about the harms of tobacco and the nicotine in the tobacco, then the warnings from the government also increased, despite their lobby. Before, everyone would be smoking everywhere. I'm old enough to remember when the airports, everyone would be smoking. The hospitals, people would be smoking. In the hospitals, people would be smoking. Younger kids cannot believe that. In the airplanes, everyone would be smoking everywhere. Then they got a little bit stricter. Then they had, because the harms of tobacco became more apparent. Why am I giving this history? It's not just to pass time, but you'll see why. Because I don't want anyone to bring an old fatwa. So then what happened is that in the airplanes, they would have smoking section in the back. So there's a non-smoking section in the same plane. How far are you in the same cabin? But they would have a smoking section. Then it became, the harms of second-hand smoke became more apparent as more research continued. So now you cannot smoke in any of these public buildings. You have to go outside. Even when it's freezing cold, they're huddling together and they're smoking out in the freezing cold. So many yards away from the exit and entrance, right? We see this scene all the time. So likewise, the fatwas change based on the harms. So the original fatwa was that, hey, it's just a plant. It's like salad. Tobacco is also another plant. It's like lettuce. So, eating lettuce is healthy. Chewing tobacco is just another type of plant. Now we know better, right? It's not like lettuce. Some people are so half asleep, they might say, okay, we learned today that tobacco is like lettuce. This is the only thing they're going to remember. No, it's not like lettuce. Then what happens is that so that's why you might find a fatwa that is completely legitimately okay. Then the harms became more apparent. It's a carcinogen. Look at what it does to the lungs, etc., etc. So as the harms became more apparent, they said, okay, it's makruh, tanzihi, light makruh. Then after it became more apparent, they said makruh tahrimi. And now many ulama have given the fatwa that it's haram. So where is the fatwa barometer right now? It's between, they're either, the lightest fatwa you can get about smoking is makruh tahrimi, which means strongly disliked. That's the lightest fatwa. It's a sinful practice which is strongly disliked, near haram. And the other fatwa is that it's haram. All the Arab ulama give fatwa it's haram. The Salafis give fatwa it's haram. Saudis give fatwa it's haram. The Deobandi scholar says makruh tahrimi. Everyone become a Deobandi now. So then, anyway, so this is what it is. So it's either makruh tahrimi or haram. And if it's a cigarette, or if it's chewing tobacco, or if it's a pipe, I don't think anyone's into pipes anymore. But now hookah is a big craze. If you want to do jawla and call people to the masjid, you can go to the hookah lounge. You find a lot of youth there, and you can give them da'wah about that, everything in this world happens with the will of Allah. Allah does and the ghayrullah cannot do. You can go to the hookah lounges. We have hookah lounges nearby too. Unfortunately, this is a reality. So many people think that just because it's a Middle Eastern type of smoking apparatus, it's okay. It's not okay. Number 3 is a question maybe you can relate to. Falling asleep, sitting down for a moment, or just laying after sunnah and falling asleep for a short duration, waiting for the salah, does it break your wudu? So the thing is, what is the bottom line here is that wudu breaks when an impurity comes out of your body. Either through sabil al-mu'tad, meaning the known ways, through your urination, defecation, impurity comes out of the body, or a person vomits it out from his mouth, or he bleeds, and impurity, the blood comes out from his body, then his wudu breaks. If the impurity comes out from your body, wudu breaks. If it physically comes out from your body, it breaks, or if there is a strong likelihood and reasonable chance that it came out, then it also will break. When there's a strong chance and reasonable likelihood that the impurity could have come out of your body and you're unaware, is if a person becomes insane. If he urinates, he doesn't know. If he passes gas, he doesn't know. Or if a person is unconscious, his wudu will break. Or if a person is intoxicated, his wudu will break. Not because he drank the wine, that's a different sin. His wudu breaks because he's drunk, he doesn't know what happened. Or if a person sleeps. So if you understand the philosophy, it makes it easier for us to understand the ruling. So when a person is completely fast asleep, istarkhat mafasiluhu, then it comes that Rasulullah ﷺ said, the fuqaha mentioned that his joints become relaxed, his body becomes relaxed. So when he's sleeping, he is not aware. His perceptions are reduced. He cannot hear, cannot see. He's not aware of what is happening. So it is a strong possibility that he could pass gas and he would be unaware. So the possibility is so great that sleeping soundly will be now replace passing gas, and it will be considered a means of breaking wudu. One of the students here in our Darus Salam, he asked in Usul al-Shashi, what if, or was it one of the other classes, he said that if there is a sleep study being conducted and we have all the data and we know that 100% that the gas, he did not pass gas because every single movement of the body is being recorded, but he slept completely soundly, will the wudu break? So this is one of the examples where sleeping soundly has now completely from all perspectives replaced passing gas as a means of breaking wudu. So yes, the wudu will still break, even though the original reason was that when a person is sleeping, you don't know about whether he's going to pass gas or not. That's why. So the simple rule is now khalas, person is sleeping soundly, wudu breaks. Now the detail regarding that is if you sleep in such a position that it is possible to pass gas. If it's completely not possible to pass gas, meaning a person is sitting with his buttocks on the ground, he is sitting in cross-legged, called Indian style, cross-legged, and he just folds himself and he puts his head down and he sleeps. Right. So some of our students are very good at that in the class. They're sleeping behind each other, then we have to wake them up. So if you're sleeping like that, and he puts his head down and he just sleeps, his wudu will not break. But if he leans forward, tips forward so much so that his rear end, his buttock region, now uplifts from the ground. It goes up. As soon as it goes up, his head goes down and his buttocks come up. Are you following? As soon as his rear end comes up, his wudu will break. If a person, of course, lying flat on the ground sleeps and he falls asleep, even for a short time, his wudu will break. But if a person is sitting, and then his wudu will not. If he's sitting in such a position that his buttocks are firmly planted on the ground, then wudu will not break. So in this question, he said that if I'm just laying down after sunnah and falling asleep for a short duration, waiting for salah, yes, wudu will break if you are laying down. This next question, if spending on oneself, for example, getting good clothes, nice car and beautiful house, is it allowed or permissible in Islam? How do you know you are not just looking after or trying to achieve dunya? So mashallah, in this question is that it's a very relative question. It depends. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put everyone in different circumstances. So there are certain obligations a person has. Meaning, in a particular scenario, a person has relatives that are very, very poor. He has maybe a handicapped brother who cannot earn, or he has some relatives who are needy. Then he has to take care of all those responsibilities. And if he's spending on luxurious items for himself and being negligent with those responsibilities, that would be haram. That would not be permissible. If a person doesn't have those responsibilities or has so much sufficient income that he is trying to lead just a comfortable life, then that would be permissible. As Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahmatullahi alayhi, one place he mentions there are 3 levels. This might sound like Greek to our youth. Araish, Asaish, and then Numaish. So Hakim al-Ummat rahmatullahi alayhi says, one is Araish, which means comfort. Then beyond that is Asaish, which is complete luxury and premium lifestyle. And beyond that is Numaish, which is absolute show. So if a person wants to have a comfortable home, comfortable lifestyle, comfortable car, it's permissible. Even if he's not being negligent with other responsibilities, then having a luxurious life may also be within the limits. Of course, as the famous example of Jalaluddin Rumi rahmatullahi in his Mathnavi is like the boat. You know about the boat in the water, is that the boat has to travel through the water. It will not reach its destination if it's still on the land. But if the water enters the boat, what happens? The boat will sink. So that means this person, it goes without saying, he is living in this dunya, in this worldly life, in this material, but he is not enraptured by this material life. He is not falling in love with this dunya. It's much easier said than done. So, if he is not falling in love with the dunya, and he's not considering himself better than other people who are less endowed with wealth, he doesn't have kibr and arrogance, he's just utilizing the blessings and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then no one can say it's haram. But then when you come to the third level, Numaish, which is it's not adding any value to you, it doesn't have extra features even, it's no more extra comfort level, but is purely for show, because it has that name brand there, it has that particular trademark on it, and you want to show off that trademark. Even though the quality of the product is the same, but you're spending more money just to show. That's not permissible. One person came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and he asked a question. Remember we talked about questions? This is also a very common way of asking questions. What did they say? I have a friend. My friend has one question that my friend has a question. He was asking, one person, he asked a question. It was a very unfortunate situation, difficult situation about marriage question, but about a relationship with her husband, etc. was not a good question. So he said this. There is a sister, someone. So I asked him, is in your family member? No, not my family member. Just one sister I know. She has this question with her husband, this, that. And then I asked her, and then she says, Dad, that this is what he does to me. So then it was one of the hardest moments for me to keep such a straight face. That he just said, she's not my family member, but then when I was talking to her, she tells me, Dad, my husband did this, did that. What's the status of my marriage? So of course he's talking about his own daughter, right? So this is very common. People say, I have a friend, or I know someone else, when the question is regarding himself. So this is a very old habit. Because this Sahabi radiallahu anhu, he was kind of shy and embarrassed, so he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Inna rajula yuhibbu an yakuna thawbuhu hasan wa na'luhu hasan. What do you say, Ya Rasulullah, about a man? Just some random person out there. He likes that his clothes are beautiful. That's why he was embarrassed. He likes to wear beautiful clothes. And he went so far as to say, Na'luhu hasan. He likes that he has beautiful shoes. What do you say about him? Is that something haram? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautiful and loves beauty. It's not haram. What is kibr? Al-kibru batul haqqi wa ghamtun nas. Arrogance is denying the truth because of your ego. You don't want to accept the truth when you're wrong. That's arrogance. And ghamtun nas means to look down on other people. If you wear beautiful shoes and have beautiful clothes, and you say Alhamdulillah, and you say وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. Allah says in the Quran, whatever blessings Allah has given you, then you should use those blessings and thank Allah for those blessings and speak about those blessings. So these are the blessings of Allah. تَحْدِيثًا بِالنِّعْمَةِ. Applying benefiting from the blessings of Allah, I make shukr to Allah for these beautiful clothes and beautiful shoes. Then that will be shukr. That will be, you will receive reward for that. But if you think I'm better than you, what type of torn clothes you're wearing, I'm richer than you, then this will become arrogance. There was one man who came into the masjid in Iraq, in Baghdad, and he had very torn clothes in disheveled state. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi quietly took a bag of gold and gave it to him, put it in his hand, and said, take this and better your condition. So he turned around and said that, no, Allah has given me a lot of money. I'm very rich, I don't need this sadaqah from you. So he said, why are you adopting such a condition then? Then make yourself look so poor. This is not Allah. Inna Allah yuhibbu an yara athara ni'matihi ala abdihi. Allah likes to see His blessings that He has given His slave to be utilized and to be shown. But so we have to make sure we don't have kibr, we have to make sure we don't have love of the dunya, and we have to make sure we are fulfilling all the obligations. Starting with zakat, and the fiqh of zakat seminars after dhuhr. And besides zakat, giving sadaqah in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not making the dunya one's objective, spending in the path of Allah, all of those virtues are there. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You cannot attain piety until you spend of that which you love. People praying on the chair, what is more proper, to have the foot of chair aligned with others or foot of person aligned with the line? This was asked last year too. This is a very commonly asked question. Is that what do you do about the chair? In case you have no idea what this question is about, the big problem comes is that when you have chairs in the saf, then if the back of the chair is in line with the feet, then the person feels that he is protruding ahead of the line. Sometimes people stand in salah and then they sit down for ruku and sajda. So if this man is standing, where is he standing? Is his ankle in line with everyone else's ankle? No. Where is the ankle? Right in the middle of the saf. So that's why he thinks, no, I'm standing right in the middle of the saf and everyone is standing behind me. So therefore what he wants to do is he wants to push his chair back and wants to make his ankles in line with everyone else's ankles. So that is a good thought, but this is wrong. Why is it wrong? It's because he wants to stand shoulder to shoulder, ankle to ankle with everyone else. But then when he goes, but what's happening is, when the time comes for sajda, then he is disrupting the person behind him. The person behind him cannot make sajda, or with great difficulty he'll be able to make sajda. Because his chair is now taking half of his area. So what should he do? Therefore, he doesn't have to worry about being shoulder to shoulder. Rather, he should bring his chair forward and make the back of the chair in line with the feet. And actually, is that if a person physically is able to stand and to perform ruku and sajda, then that person, their salah to begin with is not even valid on a chair. At least the farad salah, they have to ensure they perform it sitting down, with standing in qiyam, making ruku and sajda properly, if they are physically able to. So if you go to the Muslim countries for centuries, and even till now, there are, mashallah, seniors who are in their 70s, who are in their 80s, who are in their 90s, they perform not only the whole salah, even the tarawih, standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down. They don't have so many chairs in the masajid. And if a person is not able to stand up, then the second option is that a person performs salah sitting down. Sitting down and say Allahu Akbar, fold his arms, sitting down, and make a ruku bowing forward and make a proper sajda. That's step number 2. But the problem most of the people here, they say, is with the knees. They say that they cannot make sajda. If you cannot make sajda, proper sajda on the ground, then only you have the chair, option of the chair. In the chair, you're not making a proper sajda, you're making sajda in the air. And then again, another problem is that people sometimes bring desks and want to make sajda on the, they don't like to make sajda right in the air, so they bring a desk and make sajda on the desk. No, you do not need a desk, you make sajda in the air. There's no need, they want to have that feeling of their forehead on something solid, so they bring a desk and they make sajda on the desk. Uski koi zarurat nahi, there's no need for that. Somebody actually manufactured a salah chair, which is simply a chair with a desk in front like all the students have in school. And said, but there is absolutely, he's trying to, explore a niche market which Sharan does not even exist. Right? So there is no need for the salah chair where you make sajda on the chair. You make sajda in the air. And then the question happened is that why was this person feeling out of the line? Because he was standing up, right? But guess what? When you cannot make sajda on the ground, then you are exempted from standing up in qiyam. There is no farad qiyam for you. Qiyam, which means standing up, is farad for the one who is qadir ala sajda, the one who can make a sajda. The one who cannot make sajda on the ground, he doesn't have to stand up. Because if you take just a random survey, all the people performing salah on the chairs, what happens after Taraweeh? They stand in the parking lot and are talking. How are they standing in the parking lot? They're praying on the chair. So that means that they can stand. No one carried them on their arms and brought them onto the chair. How did they come to the chair? They walk to the chair and they stand. The problem is with the ruku and sajda, not with the ruku, the problem is with the sajda in the sitting position. When they have to bend the knee, that's where the pain is, in the knee. So because they cannot make sajda, they're exempted from standing up qiyam. So now going back to the original problem, is his feeling is out of his line because he's standing in the saf. Should he be standing to begin with? No. What should he do? Sit down. If he sits down in the chair, the back of the chair is in line with the back of the saf, now what is he? Shoulder to shoulder. So the problem is solved. So therefore he should sit in the chair if he qualifies, and he will be shoulder to shoulder. Does one have to do qada salat of Isha if one forgot to perform witr salah? Yes, if a person forgets witr salah, they have to make qada of the witr only, not of the farad Isha again. You do not have to repeat the Isha, you just have to make qada of the witr. Why is interest banned in Islam? So basically, when it comes to the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, general reasoning, overall reasoning behind all of the commandments and all of the prohibitions is very simple. Is that Allah is a master, we are the slave. And He said so. Right? So this is very simple general logic behind. We have to do investigation and figure out if it is genuinely the order of Allah or not. Once we determine this is the order of Allah, then that's where the questioning and the reasoning stops. Because we have accepted Him to be our master. He is our Lord. We accept the authority of the boss at the workplace. He is the Malikul Muluk, the King of all kings. So did Allah ban interest or not? That could be a genuine question. Why? It's not that there aren't reasons. But before we go into some of the reasons, we have to develop the mentality that when we understand that this is the order of Allah or this is the prohibition from Allah, we have to accept it. That is what Islam means, by the way. What does Islam mean? Submission to the will of Allah. There you go. Everyone knows that. It's in the newspapers, in the media, everyone knows. Islam means submission to the will of God. Islam means submission to the will of God. Doesn't mean asking why. It means submission. I submit. Sare taslim kham hai jo mizaj yaar mein aaye. I submit to whatever you demand from me. This is what Islam means. So, did Allah make interest haram? Is a good question. We need to know, did He say it's haram or is it halal? So the Quran says, أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ riba. Allah has made buying and selling halal and Allah has made riba haram. Allah Ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَذَرُوا مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الرِّبَا. O those who believe, fear Allah and leave all riba, all interest-bearing transactions. فَإِن فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, if you don't do so, فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, prepare for war against Allah and His Rasul. So it is definitely haram. Now the scholars, they do go into the field of trying to understand why, to a certain extent. This is a subject called ilmu asrar sharia, the knowledge of the secrets of the sharia, or the hikam, or the wisdom behind the rulings. Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi has written on this subject, but the most monumental famous work on the subject of the reasoning behind the injunctions is the Hujjatullah al-Baligha of Imam Shah Waliullah Dahlawi rahmatullahi. He gives a beautiful reasoning behind everything. Things that you wouldn't even imagine, he gives reasoning for that. So there are reasons why interest has been declared haram. One simple thing is, I ask you a question, who has money extra lying around to lend, to give other people as a loan? Person who's rich or a person who's very poor? Person who's rich. Who is the person who has to ask money and borrow money to take care of his basic needs of his life? Person who's rich or person who's poor? Person who's poor. So the one who has extra money lying around, he can give loans to people, is a rich person. The one who has to borrow money to bring bread on his table, to pay the medical bills, is the poor person. So simple thing is, in interest what happens? I give you a loan today, $100, you pay me back $120. I'm rich, I can afford to give you money. You are poor, you need to borrow money. What's happening in this is the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer. That is why it is not permissible. If someone says that no, leave those type of loans. How about a commercial loan? I have talent, I'm an entrepreneur, I have skill, I have energy, I'm young, I can work. Someone else has capital, someone else has money lying around, they don't have time. So why can't I take a commercial loan? I borrow money and then I do business with it. Because I don't have startup capital, I don't have money to start my business. But I have a lot of beautiful ideas. So what's wrong with this type of setup? What's wrong with this type of setup is that the Sharia also recognizes this, but it gives another solution called mudaraba. The problem with this setup is, when you get a loan from the bank to start up your business, then if you are successful or if you're a failure, if the market and the economy goes up or down, if your idea works or not, there is absolutely no risk for the one who gave you the money. His capital is secure plus interest back. Even if you are failing and you're trying your hardest, because you have a vested interest for the business to be successful, because you're going to get a profit from that. You're not trying to hurt him by making the business fail. You want it to be successful too. So you're trying hard, but it's not working. You still have to pay back the whole capital plus interest. Whereas the Sharia model is, somebody has money, somebody has skill and talent, is an entrepreneur, is that you create a partnership called mudaraba. There's a Rabbul Mal, there's a Mudarib. So one is an investor, is a sleeping partner. One is the person who is doing the business, the active partner. There's a partnership. So inshallah, if Allah puts barakah in there's its success, then they share the profit. But if there's loss, then they share the loss. The initial investment is secure. It's a loan. He has to pay them back. But he will not get any profit because the whole business failed. Right? How can he be making profit in the interest model that he's making profit? The bank is going to still get the interest even if you failed in the business. So this is not fair. You share in the profit, share in the loss. That is some of the reasons behind it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is dyeing hair besides henna allowed? And is black dye permissible? So, henna is permissible and sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu encouraged it as well. And there's a hadith, غَيِّرُهَا, the shape, that change this whiteness in your hair, color it with henna. Using other dyes are also permissible. But when it comes to black, وَاشْتَنِبُوا السَّوَادِ, it comes in the hadith, stay away from black. Why? Or the purpose is, there are hadith in which using black or using the original color of the hair, if a person has brown hair, then it would be brown. If a person is blonde, then it would be to have blonde. What is the original color of the hair? To avoid using the original color of the hair. to avoid deception. So there are hadith about that, avoiding it with certain exceptions. Like a mujahid who's in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fighting in the path of Allah, then he can to create fear in the heart of the enemy. Even though he's older, he will look younger, so he will create fear in the heart of the enemy. But otherwise, if somebody is going for a marriage proposal and then he dyes his hair, this is absolutely gharar, deception. Laysa minna man ghashana. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the one who tries to deceive one of us is not amongst us. So therefore, that would be completely impermissible. So when it comes to the prohibition, most of the fuqaha state that outright coloring the original color is not permissible. And some say that it's not permissible if there's deception involved. If there's no deception involved, then Sahibain, etc., they have given permissibility even of black. But if there's any condition, any scenario where there's deception, then that would definitely be haram. Other colors are permissible, but not recommended. Is there, if somebody, dyes his hair neon green, no one will think that's natural, right? क्या करें हमारा बेटा हरे बाल के साथ आया, right? No, it's not going to be that he has green hair. He was born with green hair. Then we shaved his green head and he gave sadaqah. No, there is no green hair natural. So that means that it would be permissible, but it's not something considered, zi or salihin. We should adopt the clothing in the style of the righteous people. So this is man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum. Whoever adopts something of special characteristic of a particular nation will be considered amongst them. So this is, you're adopting this hairstyle of fusaq, of different types of musicians who are involved in different types of haram music trade. You're looking like them. You don't want to look like some punk, right? This is some type of wrong lifestyle. So that's why it should be avoided. And does it still go against Islam if one takes a private loan for school and ends up paying interest? Yes, it is something which is prohibited to pay interest, as we covered, whatever the case may be. Is it better to recite longer surahs and pray less? I'm looking at the time. Yes, we're almost done. Is it better to recite longer surah and pray less nafil, or shorter surah and more nafil? Same implication with reading Quran. So just a disclaimer, what I'm reading grammatically many times will not make sense and is wrong sentences, but I'm just reading the question as is, verbatim. So same implication with reading Quran. Is it better to read slow and less rather than fast and more? Quality versus quantity. So very good question. So the detail for this would be, is it better to recite longer surah and pray less nafil, or shorter surah and more nafil? Depends. What you're praying. For example, let us take tahajjud. So there's a certain quantity that is there too. What is a quantity? 8 rakat. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu anha mentions, ما كان يزيد في رمضان ولا في غيره على 11 ركعة. In Ramadan and outside of Ramadan, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam always performed 11 rakat, 8 rakat tahajjud and 3 rakat witr. So he always performed 8 rakat tahajjud. So if you have a scenario now, see, this is why there's detail in the answer. If somebody prays 2 very long rakat of tahajjud, long qiraat, versus a person recited proper surahs, 8 small surahs, Alam tara kayfa liila fi Quraysh arayta alladhi inna atina, 8 proper surahs, 8 rakat, which in the same amount of time. Both of them took 15 minutes. Both of them took 20 minutes. 20 minutes prayer, one performed 2 rakat, one performed 8 rakat. Which one is better? In this scenario, you'll say 8 is better. Why is 8 better? Because he fulfilled the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam of performing 8 rakat. Now you have another scenario. You have 1 hour of Qiyamul Layl, mashallah. One person performed 1 hour long 8 rakat, long qiraat 8 rakat. And one person performed 1 hour, he performed 40 rakat, small rakats. So which one is better? The long 8 rakat would be better than the 40 quick rakats. So that is why you have to look at the quantity, and within the quantity, then you add the quality. Yeah, the opposite scenario, conversely, is that if you have 10 minutes and somebody performed slow 4 rakat and somebody performed super fast 8 rakat without fulfilling the right of tajweed, which one is better? 4 rakat would be better than the 8 rakat here. Even though because 8 is a magic number, provided you are reciting the Quran properly. But if you are slaughtering the recitation, Allah says, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, then slow would be better than fast. Likewise, regarding reading, is it better to read slow and less rather than fast and more? So if a person is reading fast, but he is fulfilling the rights of the recitation and the ahkam of tajweed, and he ends up reading more, then that more recitation can be more rewarding. But if a person is reading slow, and not only for tajweed, but he's making tadabbur and tafakkur, and he's crying and he's pondering over the meanings, that can also be more rewarding. So it depends. Oh, this is a last question for today. We want to honor all the questions that come. And inshallah, this would end it. This one was about Ian Dickinson. Okay. All right. That's it. We have finished all the questions, alhamdulillah. What would be considered as israf when it comes to building a masjid regarding beautification of masjid? Very good question. So, if there is any particular sum which was donated just general for the masjid, and if it is used in extravagant beautification, then that is not permissible. But if somebody from his own side, he makes intention and says that I want to donate for this particular chandelier, or I want to donate for this particular calligraphy, or for this particular artwork, and he makes that intention, he said this is for this cause, then it would be permissible. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says, في بيوت أذين الله أن ترفع. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving permission that these buildings that are dedicated to Him, because the masjid is dedicated to Allah, أن ترفع, that they be erected high. Rafa'a, rafi' means high. Turfa means made high and made big. So many times what happens, we've noticed that people who have the ultimate most luxury, we talked about Araish, Asaish, Numaish. When it comes to their personal homes, they may be at the Numaish level, at the show-off, extravagant level. But they have a personal home. Is one old man and one old woman. They live together. All the children are graduated and working and married and have their own homes. And they live in a $3 million home, $5 million home. It's very common. With 6 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms. It's just 2 people living. Whereas their house erected for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people object. So sometimes the people, they say that, okay, how was the Masjid al-Nabawi, the Masjid in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Look at the standard of the houses of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam too. So compare the Masjid with respect to the houses. The Masjid was not lower standard than the homes. Na'udhu billah min dhalik. Do you expect that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba were ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah would have better homes and would have a lower than standard masjid? Does that befit them? No. So the standard of the masjid was higher than the standard of the homes. So as the standard of the homes increased, then the standard of the masjid level increased as well. So that means I will live in a palace, but the masjid should be in a basement only. It shouldn't be a purposeful built masjid. No. We live in palaces, but the masjids are going to be in basements. Why? Because, you don't want to be extravagant. You see the fault in the thinking? And the most ascetic and zahid, the one who had least attachment to worldly things from amongst the khulafa, was Khalifa Khamisul Khulafa al-Rashidin, the 5th rightly guided Khalifa, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi. He hated pomp and show, and he had the most ascetic lifestyle personally in his own home, and the stories of that are so great. He cut off all the expenses from that. As the king of the time, as the Khalifa, he didn't take anything from the royal treasury. One time he came home and his daughters were covering their faces And he asked, why did you cover your faces? They said, we had nothing to eat, so we were eating raw onions, the princesses. You know, and the mother, she was such a woman, Fatima bint Abdul Malik, her father was a king, Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Her grandfather was a king, Marwan bin Hakam. And her husband was a king, Umar bin Abdul Aziz. And her brothers were kings, Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik, Walid bin Abdul Malik, Hisham bin Abdul Malik. 3 brothers were kings, Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik, Hisham bin Abdul Malik. Her father was a king, Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Her husband was a king. All her relatives were kings in their respective times. Such a princess and queen. She was at that level of simplicity. They did not even have clothes to buy for Eid for his children. So he asked, the wife asked, can we get some clothes, some money for maybe the next month's payment that you get from the public treasury, if you can ask for 1 month early. So he went to the treasurer and asked him, can you give me next month's payment, and then I won't take next month so that I can get some clothes for Eid. And the treasurer said that I definitely can give it to you as long as you can give me a guarantee that you will be serving the ummah till next month. If you're going to remain alive, if you can give me that guarantee, I'll give you next month. So he said, thank you so much for correcting my mistake. I cannot take advance from next month from the treasury of the Muslims. So I'm just giving an example. He was such an ascetic. So therefore, when he came to the Jami' Umawi, the Jami' Masjid in Damascus, built by his predecessor, Marwan, and he looked at how beautiful it was and how high the minarets were. And this is one of the oldest constructed masjids that's still in its original construction in the world today. The central Jami' Masjid of Damascus. In his heart, he was thinking, oh my God, this is so extravagant. This is such a show. Knowing his personality, you can understand now. He was just thinking about it, and then 2 Christians came, Qibti, Copt Christians from Egypt, Egyptian Copt Christians. And they said to each other, oh my God, look at this building erected by the Muslims to worship Allah. And one said, how grand it is. And look at the Muslims, how beautiful their architecture is. And look how advanced they are in their building. And look how much they love their Allah that they erected such a beautiful monument to worship their Allah. Then he raised his hand and said, Alhamdulillah, oh Allah, I thank you that you sent these 2 Christians so that you can remove my thinking in my heart that I had a wrong idea. I thought this was show, but this is actually a house of Allah erected for your worship. Why am I objecting? And just recently, Mufti Nazim Mangera, Imam of MCC and MEC, he sent a text message to Mufti Azimuddin that one sister came all the way there to accept Islam. And when he asked her, how did you accept Islam? What brought you to Islam? She said that I passed by Darus Salam Mosque, and it's such a beautiful masjid. I became so interested that what could be such a beautiful house of worship? And then I started studying Islam, and I realized it is a true religion and accepted Islam. So he texted us this good news. So this is just recently it happened. So it depends on the intention. It definitely depends on the intention. If somebody donates something specifically for beautification purposes, it would be permissible to use. Hope that clarifies that. We had one last question about how to give Jummah khutbahs. By my friend here, he asked this question. He didn't send it here, but he asked me verbally. I was going to do it today, but we will do it next time, inshallah. That many people at work, and they have to end up leading the Jummah khutbah and delivering that. So what is the procedure of how to deliver Jummah khutbah to make sure that we do it correctly? We'll continue with that next session. Inshallah, we will now distribute the Yasin and recite Surah Yasin and make dua, and then perform Ishraq, and then rest, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.